Hey everybody, welcome to Now It's Dark. I, excuse me, just watched a movie on Tubi called A Knife in the Dark. This is also available on Prime for 99 cents. So if for some reason um, you don't want to sit through the ads for this movie, I suppose you could pay the 99 cents for it. I wouldn't recommend it personally. This is a 2024 film. It's 1 hour and 16 minutes. It's directed by Joe Sherlock, and I've definitely watched other Joe Sherlock movies before, but I would not count this as one of the top movies of his. And uh, it's really a thriller. Again, I'm getting trapped into these searches for horror movies, and thrillers are popping up, and I still give them a look because of like an interesting poster or description. So here's the description. In the Thornton mansion, the idle rich spend their days, enjoy their wealth and power. But this mysterious family has a deadly secret. Who is wearing the mask and wielding a knife in the dark? And who will be their next victim? Um, I hate shitting on really low budget movies because, I think it takes a lot of work and effort, and you know, I years and years ago I was in a low budgety kind of like a bunch of friends get together and make a movie. So I know there's a lot of work involved, but this story has a lot of like holes in it. It was written by Keith Parker. There is a really big cast, a little bit too big, but I suppose it's to have collateral damage, as I call it. We have characters that get introduced just so that they can be killed. John Kerr plays Detective Duggan. He's one of the main characters, and because um, the names don't get mentioned a lot, I was not able to pinpoint who was who in this IMDb cast listing because none of them have a profile picture. So we'll just say there's a couple of girls and a couple of guys that are the main cast. So it revolves around this opening sequence of I called him dad at first, but then I did find out his name was George. He gets murdered at the beginning by this masked, robed person. And I really was like, oh, is that the mask? Really? That does not look like what that picture on the poster. That picture on the poster is clearly like somebody in face paint, maybe. But I guess that's the artist's rendition of this really cheap, like dollar store skeleton mask that has the little flappy piece here that they didn't even bother tucking into the shirt for the person who is the murderer, who the whole mystery of who is this person. So dad gets killed first, and there is money, a watch, and a ring stolen. Okay. So then we get mom and the two girls and one guy. I assumed that that was like the wife and two daughters and a son, but I'm not even 100% sure that that is what the situation was. Um, they are trying to figure out like what to do. They do end up calling the police, and that's where we meet Detective Dungan, not Dugan, Dungan. And boy, he was really like he had his corner with him, and it was just this lady in like regular clothes with like a Walmart meat department white uh, butcher's coat or whatever, those white coats that like they wear in the supermarket meat departments. Um, and so they're like, okay. The mom gets freaked out when the detective says there's going to have to be an autopsy, and she puts her hand on his and says, well, I really don't think that's appropriate. because of our religion. And it looks like she's done something to make him agree with her, like controlled his mind or something. And I picked up on it, but then it didn't really go anywhere. So I just kind of just thought it was like a weird thing. And so they don't do an autopsy on dad. Now we have to worry about a funeral, and there's going to be guests coming to this mansion, which, by the way, from the external shots of this place, it looks like it was just like a normal small house at the end of a cul-de-sac in some suburban, you know, neighborhood. It's definitely not a mansion. And inside the house, the rooms, like all of the rooms, are just regular house size rooms, and they're cluttered. There's even big TVs, like old style TVs, and just clutter. So for this house to be a mansion and for this group to be considered like this rich elite, um, they it just didn't translate from the screen. It just didn't look right. I wish that might have. I wish that could have been a plot or something different, but because of the rich and affluent, like now it was going to be, since the father died, George, where was the money, the inheritance, going to be split? And so we have that kind of stress going on. Then overnight, we get this robed Skeletor masked guy come in and kill the mom. And she's just kind of laying there dead by the front door. And all of these rich, affluent kids are oblivious to that anything went on. But then two more family members come to the door and they let themselves in and they find mom, call the police. So now the detective has come back again for a second murder in a very short amount of time. And then we kind of find out the family dynamic of the two people that just showed up, the two guys, and what the relation is. Turns out that one of the guy was the brother of George, even though at first I thought, man, he looks way too young to be the father or the brother of George. But when he took his big, huge, flamboyant glasses off, you could see that the guy had some age to him. Not necessarily as old as George, but enough that it was passable. So now we're dealing with like multiple murders, who's doing it, for what reason. Uh, we find out through, a couple of things that a lot of this billions of dollars of net worth that this George guy had, apparently, that he had invested like 80% of it in Bitcoin. So it kind of dated when this movie was filmed, and kind of added, like, I don't know why, a weird dynamic other than it just they wanted to mention Bitcoin, which I guess created like this situation where the kids and the other family members, brother, like that there's not necessarily as much attainable money as they thought that was going to be distributed. So the brother, um, he devises a split of 50-50 between those three and him. So he would get 50%, and then the other three could split 50%, which of course they didn't think was a very fair split. And why should they do that? And the brother was like, well, because you guys obviously have had something to do with these murders, because I just got here. And that's the way it is. We'll do this split, but you have to find our long lost other family member, Michael, who's just apparently been on the streets, living on the streets. Um, and so one of the girls calls a private dick to go for $10,000, find Michael out in the wild, which he does do. And when you see Michael, you're like, wow, that is a really tall, bald guy with a very red, natural red beard. All these other people are like dark haired and whatever else. So, but whatever. Um, these are a lot of the same actors and actresses that this Joe, um, Spurlock, Sherlock. I don't know why I said Spur. Excuse me, that he uses in a lot of his films. So I did recognize the bald, red, bearded guy as well. So he comes to the house now. He's got some like real issues mentally, um, and the private dick just wants to hang out because he needs to get his money, but he's also a little suspicious of the family. We get another break-in from this Skeletor Dollar Tree robe guy. He kills another person, so the cops get called again. The detective shows up. He's like, "We've had 3 murders here in 3 days." The private dick kind of goes off to the side and says, "You know what? I'll find out what I can. I'm going to be here again overnight." And so whatever. He ends up hooking up with one of the chicks, the one that called him to find Michael. He wakes up with bite marks on his leg, and then he goes to open up the mini blinds in the bedroom. Very small bedroom, by the way, for a mansion. And she freaks out when he's trying to open the windows, like, "Ah, it's too bright." Blah, blah. So then you really kind of piece together, oh, that this is all, they're vampires. They're vampires, even though that they've been like just going about business, and the one family member was outside all the time and living in the streets, and during the day is when he was found, and the brother and everything else that comes. So there's like some real issues with the story, and I'm not going to spoil who was the Kurt killer, but it kind of escalates from there. It does have kind of a fun twist ending. The detective uh, does end up having to come back. We get a couple more kills, and there's an interesting resolution to it. We never find out where the money that was invested in bitcoins goes, so I unfortunately spoil that for you. But there's a fun little twist. The movie was paced okay. I'm thankful that it was only an hour and 16 minutes. It's not one of the better movies on Tubi by a long shot, but if you're bored and you want to watch a non-vampire-ish vampire movie, I guess this falls into that category, then give it a check. It's A Knife in the Dark, 2024. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and keep checking back for more great stuff.
Pro 18, got 20.